I always try to tell them, like, you can tell when they're really down on themselves and they don't think they can do anything. I always tell them that I believe in them, but I need them to believe in themselves too, because I know they can do it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Inspiring Teachers, the Honored podcast, where we shine a spotlight on life-changing teachers across the country. I'm Hannah, your podcast host, and our podcast is brought to you by Honored, which is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to honoring and elevating great teachers nationwide. Our mission is to inspire and retain great teachers, keeping them in the classroom as long as possible. Every month at Honored, we select an exceptional educator in the United States to be the recipient of the Honored National Teaching Award. Each honoree, as we call them, gets a $5,000 cash reward, and we then tell the story on our website and our social media platforms of how that teacher has impacted their students' lives. To learn more about our organization, you can go to our website at honored.org. While you're there, if you have a teacher you would like to recognize, you can nominate them at honored.org/nominate. We are so excited to have you listening in on another Honoree podcast episode. Today we are joined by Marcy Anderson, a second-grade teacher from Kansas. She was nominated for this award by her student Ben Parrott and Ben's mom, Jessica. To help share the impact of Marcy's teaching, we are also joined today by Ben and Jessica. Before we dive into Marcy's story, we are excited to kick off our honoree episode with our special segment, Teachers Who Inspired, which is featured at the beginning of each episode. Here, we invite well-known individuals to share a story about a teacher who had a lasting impact on their lives. These stories remind us that behind every great achievement, there's often an inspiring teacher who believed in their potential. Today, we're thrilled to have our guest on our special segment, Steve Drummond. Steve Drummond is an author, educator, and for more than 20 years, a journalist at NPR in Washington. As a senior editor there, his work has been recognized with many of journalism's highest honors. Before coming to NPR, he was a newspaper reporter in Florida and in Michigan, and has written for many publications. A 3-time graduate of the University of Michigan, Drummond now lives in Bethesda, Maryland, and teaches journalism at the University of Maryland.
I went to a big suburban high school outside Detroit. It was full of very large classes and desks lined up in rows and lots of rules and regulations. And a thing that happened in my sophomore year that seemed so surprising in this industrial setting was to have a teacher who talked to his students like grown-ups and treated us like adults too. Simpson G. Cloyd was a World War II veteran who had learned photography in the Army and had come back home to Wayne, Michigan to teach. I met Mr. Cloyd in the 10th grade and took his classes all the way through senior year. And his teaching style was a great one I've seen in the best career and technical courses, and one I try to model with my journalism students today. He'd talk to us and show us the principles and ideas he wanted us to learn, and then send us out to apply them and submit examples of that work. And then we'd talk about the photos with Mr. Cloyd, he'd offered up critiques, and we'd go out and do it again. Somehow the class seemed almost unsupervised. Students were off in the darkroom or coming and going with their cameras, and Mr. Cloyd wandered around, offering suggestions or just talking. It felt like he was there to help you succeed, not to police your compliance or to make sure you were sitting in the right seat. Mr. Cloyd retired when I was a senior, and I remember he invited me over to his house to meet his wife and have lunch and talk about cameras, just like a grown-up. I've never forgotten the boost he gave to my self-esteem and the model he set for how to engage with students, and the lifelong love of photography that dates back to his classroom in the 1970s.
We are so grateful to be able to share that wonderful audio for our Teachers Who Inspired segment. Throughout the rest of the episode, we'll share Marcy Anderson's story and the amazing impact she has on her students. To start us off, you'll hear from Marcy, who shares what led her to teaching.
Well, originally when I went to college, I was going to go into some kind of healthcare. I thought maybe I wanted to become a physical therapist, and then I switched to nursing. I could not remember the names of medicines and things like that, so it just didn't really click with me. So I decided, I kind of remembered how when I was a teenager and actually even through college, I was a swim instructor. And I could always get the kids that were terrified of the water, that refused to get in. I could, by the end of our session, I could always get them in and doing the skills that they needed to be doing. So I loved working with kids or special needs kids as well. I did a lot of work with Special Olympics and things like that. So that's kind of what directed me towards teaching. And I have been doing it for a very long time, about 25 years now. When my husband and I graduated college, we moved to Toledo, and I taught there for about 6 years. And then we were lucky to move back to Kansas, where our family was. And I've been teaching at Manchester Park for 20 years now.
To learn more about Marcy's incredible impact, we spoke with Ben's mom, Jessica, who shares the heartwarming reasons behind nominating Marcy for this award. Marcy has gone above and beyond in supporting Ben in and out of the classroom. From navigating learning challenges to being a source of motivation, Marcy's impact has been felt not only by Ben, but by his mom and dad as well.
So the reason that we wanted to nominate Mrs. Anderson is one, teaching is a hard job, and I don't think teachers get enough recognition for what they do, especially with the number of kids that they have, and they all have different needs and abilities. But not only that, we think that it's really important to recognize and honor people who've gone above and beyond, which Marcy certainly has gone above and beyond with Ben, and just the amount of passion she has and the amount of time and energy that she poured into spending and helping Ben with everything from motivating him to helping him with learning. Just there's no amount of words, honestly, that could explain how thankful we are for everything that she has done and continues to do. She's made a huge impact on Ben and his life and our lives as well. And the fact that Ben knows he has someone other than mom and dad in his corner and supporting him and believes in him, there's no amount of words that honestly could explain how much that means to me as a parent, to know that he has somebody else that he can turn to.
Seeing Marcy each day was what made school so exciting for Ben. From getting lots of hugs to feeling seen when he was struggling, Ben shares more about what makes Marcy's classroom so special.
Oh, she gives me a lot of extra help, even times with just me when she could. Best thing is seeing Miss Anderson and getting lots of hugs.
So that was his most favorite thing, was getting to see Mrs. Anderson every day and getting lots of hugs. And then all the extra help. And then what about these other things?
I got a lot of positive notes. We had a special signal when I needed help. She could tell when I was struggling or having a bad day and could always cheer me up.
In Jessica's nomination, she mentioned that Marcy had a slide in her teacher night presentation that stuck out to her that said, "I call my students my kids because in our 1 year together, they aren't just kids in my class, they become a part of my heart." In talking with Marcy, she shares more about how this has come to be a value in her teaching and the passion she feels to ensure her students feel taken care of and capable of succeeding.
I have a parent night where the parents come in and we talk about what we're going to be learning during the year. And I did include a quote that I can't take credit for. I don't know who started it, but I know a lot of teachers use it. But it just really resonated with me because it's sincerely how I feel. It just says, I call my students my kids because in our 1 year together, they aren't just kids in my class, they become a part of my heart. And so, I have 3 kids of my own, but I really do consider all of the kids in my classroom my own kids as well. I want them all to succeed just as I would my own kids, and I wanna help them feel like they can succeed. Um, and so even when they're not in my class anymore, I love getting hugs from them and seeing them in the hallways. And even, when they get older as well, hearing from them is pretty special.
Marcy's passion for supporting her students doesn't go unnoticed by the parents. Jessica shares how in just 2 weeks of knowing Ben, Marcy became an advocate for him, speaking up for his learning needs in his IEP meeting. Her ability to recognize when a child needs help is truly a gift that has had a lasting impact on Ben and his family.
The first time where I really felt like I really understood what Marcy meant when she said, like, my kids, the students are my kids, was when she walked into our IEP meeting 2 weeks into the school year or whatever. And I was super nervous because Ben, up until that point, other than speech therapy, hadn't had any accommodations or anything like that, but school was starting to get more difficult. We were struggling with some of his ADHD meds and everything. And I grew up watching my parents fight the school system to try to get my sister the help she needed. And so that was really my only experience with it because he's my oldest. And so I was super nervous. And she walks in, and I didn't say more than like 3 words the entire time, because as soon as they started talking about, moving on from the speech therapy and saying, okay, anything else, Marcy immediately spoke up and, no, he needs help with this and this and this. And no, it's not just reading. He needs help with all of the subjects. He needs more small group time and all that kind of stuff. I mean, she was his biggest advocate in that meeting, which put me at ease, that, within 2 weeks, she already knew exactly what he needed in the classroom. The, it's difficult as a parent watching your kids struggle. So even just, there were plenty of times where my countless emails on a weekly basis where she was just making me feel better about things. Frequent updates about how he was doing, at the end of the year when he came home saying that he was hating himself and he was biting and hitting himself. She immediately helped us get a meeting with her and the school counselor on a Friday afternoon of all things, to figure out what to do, coming up with different things to try. She watched out for him at recess because he was isolating himself, and there were multiple times where she would go and try to find kids to play with him so that he wasn't over there by himself, or if she wasn't at recess, she was having the other second grade teachers keep an eye on him. And then there's the good times where, she continues to be a positive influence and a positive impact and encourage him and cheer him on. And every little thing, whether it's the ups or the downs, she's there behind him, supporting him.
As Ben transitioned from 2nd to 3rd grade, Ben missed being in Marcy's classroom, but they have continued to create ways to stay connected through emails, notes, and opportunities to see Marcy at school. Continuing to build relationships with her students beyond the time in her classroom is a testament to how much Marcy truly cares.
She wrote me a special note about how much she believes in me in my special book, Lenexa is my superpower. Lots of hugs. She emails me all the time, and I got to have a special lunch at school with her this year when I was missing her. I really like telling her things and hearing from her. We share pictures of our tulips, and we both are tracking the same adopted seal.
So he struggled a little bit transitioning from 2nd to 3rd grade, a whole new teacher. He was comfortable with Mrs. Anderson and got to the point where he was inviting her out for ice cream in all of the notes he was writing during class to her. And so I asked if there was a way that he could have a lunch with her. And so he got to have a special lunch at school with her to catch up because he was missing her. And then for Christmas, he got Mrs. Anderson a adopted seal bracelet, and then he got the same one from Santa. And so they're both tracking the same seal, which he thinks is really cool and exciting.
Jessica shares the positive impact of Marcy's teaching on Ben beyond the classroom. From the start of 2nd grade to now, his self-esteem and his ability to believe in himself have grown exponentially. Since being in Marcy's class, he has become more willing to try new things and believe in himself more to achieve his goals. Through her teaching, Marcy created a safe space for Ben where he knew he had someone believing in him.
There's lots of different ways. I mean, there's the obvious. He had made a lot of improvement over the year academically. But one of the biggest things I think that we noticed and we continue to notice is the impact that she had on improving his self-esteem and his ability to believe in himself. School is very, very challenging at times. Ben, when we were going through these questions, said, Mrs. Anderson helped me get through the impossible 2nd grade, which it wasn't impossible because you did it. But there was a lot of times where, he never thought that he could do it. He would look at stuff and didn't even want to try. And by the end of the year, even if sometimes we had to start off by saying, well, Mrs. Anderson thinks that you can do this, otherwise she wouldn't have given it to you. By the end of the year, he, on the last day of school, he came home and I asked him, I was like, so do you believe that you can do this and you can go to 3rd grade? And he confidently looked at me and said, yes, I do. And then said that he had all these notes to send to Mrs. Anderson and I had no way to send them to her. So the biggest impact we see is how much he now believes in himself. He's willing to try more things and do more things. We still use Marcy as a source of inspiration sometimes when he's feeling down or really is struggling with something. There's been times where to get him to do some writing or reading, we use Marcy to encourage him to do that, and it works wonderful. So just she created a safe space for him, a place that he knew that he could do things and that he had someone believing in him and in his corner, and he continues to feel that way. They continue to email back and forth. Ben has gotten really good at using the voice to text on my phone to send emails rather than writing it out. But they email each other all the time, which we, again, are greatly appreciative of. They share stories and pictures. And last night we sent a video of him reading a book that, even a year ago, never in a million years did I think he'd be reading something that challenging as what he was, and let alone being willing to try it. And so it's the confidence and the belief in himself is huge.
Marcy takes the time to truly get to know each of her students through learning about their strengths, weaknesses, and personal interests. Through building connections with her students, she creates an environment where students feel safe, supported, and confident. Her work and dedication help students learn the vital skill of how to believe in themselves.
I think it's super important to get to know each student individually and find out their strengths and their weaknesses, and also what they like and what they enjoy doing inside and outside of school, because a lot of times you can use that. Like Ben loved to build Legos. He's super creative. He loves Minecraft and video games and things like that. So just kind of connecting with the kids on things that they enjoy and things that are important to them helps them feel safer with you and more confident. Um, I work really hard on kids that struggle with just any particular subject. I think it's important that they know a lot. I've seen a lot of kids that just, if they struggle in maybe reading, they just automatically think, oh, I can't do anything. I'm not smart. I'm not good enough. I don't need to participate. I don't have anything to add. We do a lot of group work in my class, and I always want them to know that they're smarter than they think they are and that they have a lot to add. I mean, Ben is incredibly creative and has so many talents in other ways. And I think it's exciting to see him share that with other classmates as well. I always try to tell them, like, you can tell when they're really down on themselves and they don't think they can do anything. I always tell them that I believe in them, but I need them to believe in themselves too, because I know they can do it.
Ben shares more about how Marcy's belief in him allowed him to feel confident in his work. Building on this, Jessica reflects on how Marcy adapted his homework to meet his learning needs while still helping him to grow, striking the perfect balance between feeling supported and challenged.
Always telling me I could do it and that she believes in me. She says it's okay to make mistakes and would give me work she knows I can do. She makes me feel safe.
I think one of the biggest things and that I noticed a difference in his confidence was they would get books sent home daily for him to read. And when Marcy found out that he was spending sometimes close to 2 hours between the breaks between reading and spelling and practicing math, I mean, 2 hours worth by the time we were done, that we were spending on all of these things, because reading a page would take 15 minutes sometimes, depending on the words. She continued to send those books home so that he could challenge himself, but she was also started sending home books that were more at his level. That was something that he could read independently, because up until that point, he was never reading by himself. It was always, I needed mom and dad to help me. He couldn't just go off and read a book. And so just working on giving him something that she knew would help build up his own confidence in it, I think was huge, because then that helped him take that step to continue to try with the harder things, knowing that it was okay if we only got through 1 or 2 pages, but hey, here's this book that you can go and read on your own. You don't need my help. And that his teacher was giving it to him. It didn't make him feel like he was reading a book that was younger than him or that kind of stuff. And even with the 2 projects that he did during the year where a book was involved, Marcy helped us find books that were more at his level, that weren't quite as challenging, to bring it down to his level so that he didn't feel as discouraged by it. So still, she was always challenging him, but also making sure that he had stuff that didn't make it feel like it was impossible for him to do. So there was still building confidence along the way, but still also giving him that challenge that was appropriate for him.
What keeps Marcy's passion going are the moments in which her students start to believe in themselves. Working with students who struggle with confidence, she finds joy in seeing that moment when everything clicks for them. This continues beyond her classroom as she continues to hear stories from past students as they grow and succeed.
I think probably just my most favorite thing, the reason why I love it the most, is for kids that really don't have that confidence and don't believe in themselves. And I work with them, I do small groups. And once it finally clicks and they have that aha moment and then they start believing in themselves and they're so proud, um, that's what gets me the most excited. But I also love hearing from my past students, getting emails. I've received emails from people who have kids now. I was in the hall the other day, and one of the substitute teachers walked over to me and she goes, "I don't know if you remember me, but I'm," and she started to say her name and I said her name, and she said, "I loved your class." And I was like, "I loved you." And it's cool to see the kids even when they go on and get older, because like I said, I still feel like they're my kids. So it's fun to see them succeed as they get older.
In wrapping up our conversation, Ben shared a heartwarming thought which sums up Marcy perfectly.
She's unforgettable. She is kind, strong, helpful, smart, powerful, and always awesome. Miss Anderson helps people She is the best teacher ever, and she should never change.
Thank you so much for listening and joining us today to learn more about Marcy Anderson, our March honoree and recipient of the Honored National Teaching Award. To read more about her story, you can visit our website at honored.org or click the link in the episode description. If you have a teacher who you want to recognize and nominate for our teaching award, you can head to honored.org/nominate to recognize a teacher today. If you enjoyed today's podcast, you can follow us and leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening in from. Thanks again for listening, and make sure to tune in next month to hear the incredible story of our April honoree.